Welcome to the writer reads The Strays of Lunar One, Book 1, The Unwilling, Chapter 24, Stand in Alpha. The trip to the cell didn't take long, but Lewis was glad he had guards. Between the two of them, he managed to keep himself upright, sinking onto the narrow bed in the cell as soon as they arrived. Don't go to sleep, the head hunter instructed as someone knocked at the door. When it opened, the smell of steak filled the room and all thought of sleep fled. Lewis's stomach rumbled and his wolf clawed its way to the surface. Out, the female hunter commanded. Aiden? The male hunter stepped forward, his uniform shredding as he changed, matching Lewis in size and then outstripping him. Lewis snarled, his attention focused on the outsized hybrid appearing before him. His two guards left with all the rest. A trolley bearing several covered platters appeared in the doorway, and Aiden pulled it into the room. Hungry? He asked, and Lewis flicked his ears, pushing weakly off the bed. Aiden was beside him in two strides, shoving him back down. I'll bring you food, he promised. Stay here. Lewis curled his lips in a snarl, and Aiden turned, his answering snarl filling the room with promised violence. I am an alpha. I will provide. As if to prove it, he whipped the cover off one of the trays and tossed Lewis's steak. To Lewis's horror, he caught it with his jaws, snatching it out of the air and bolting it down in 4 swift chomps. Ease up, Aiden growled, wheeling the cart over. All this is yours, but you need to chew it. He pulled a tall flask out from the cupboard under the trolley. And you need to drink this. Lewis glanced up as he pulled the trolley closer. Aiden set the flask down in front of him with a firm thump. All of it. Lewis paused. He'd been about to pick up another steak, but the solidity of that thump and the glitter in the bounty hunter's eye gave him pause. Drink it all, huh? Why, yes, sir, Mr. Officer. Curling his lip in a silent snarl, he diverted his hand and lifted the flask, raising it to his lips and taking a hefty swallow. Holy hell, that was good! Following the bounty hunter's instruction was easy, and Lewis drained the flask in a matter of seconds. Putting the flask back on the trolley, he looked up at the hunter. Is there more? You drank a liter of the stuff. Eat your steak, and I'll see what I can do. He would? Maybe the guy really was an alpha. Lewis scowled. He wasn't his alpha, though. Looking down at the steaks, he forced himself to pick up a knife and fork. Oliver might have turned him into a wolf, but that didn't mean he had to behave like an animal. His internal wolf wanted nothing more than to bolt down the entire tray, if only to stop the other wolf from getting to it first. To his relief, Aiden backed off, moving to lean against the cell door. It helped, but Lewis still ate quickly, clearing one tray and then the next. When he downed the last mouthful of steak and inspected the cupboard for more, the bounty hunter pushed off the wall. You need to sleep, he said, and it was an order. Lewis cocked his head, snagging the flask off the top of the trolley and waving it at the hunter. Is there more? He asked. I ordered some, Aiden told him, taking the flask out of his hand and setting it back on the trolley. As he did, there was a knock at the door, and the promised flask arrived. Aiden handed it over and cocked his head. I don't know where you're putting it all, he said, but you'd better sleep it off before the docs need you again. Lewis froze mid-swallow. They're going to take more blood? No, they're going to want to put some back so you can metabolize it. You done? Aiden stretched out his hand, and Lewis hastily drank the rest of what was in the flask. He handed it back, waiting until Aiden was at the door before stretching out on the bed. The other wolf was gone, locking him in before he'd closed his eyes. It didn't matter. Lewis was asleep seconds later. The persistent buzz of an incoming call woke him several hours later, and Florrie wasn't impressed when he finally replied. For a minute I thought you'd been put into stasis, she told him, and if that had happened it was going to be very difficult to save you. Very difficult, Lewis noticed. Not impossible. So you can save us then? He asked, keeping his eyes and mouth closed and answering her in the implant alone. I can, but I have one or two minor details to clear up before I tell you how. When you're ready, I'll let you know. In the meantime, sit tight. Anything else I should know? No, I've got company. Lewis cut her off as the door opened, and she cut the call. Lewis swung himself upright, taking in his visitors as he did so. Can I have a minute? he asked, indicating the very basic sand facilities. The three medics in the doorway exchanged glances, shrugged, and stepped back out. You've got 5, Aiden's voice told him as the door closed once more. 5, Lewis grumbled. But he was ready by the time they returned, sitting on the edge of the bed. He eyed the trolley and array of instruments they brought with them and gave them a worried look. You'll have to put me out if you want to dissect me. They exchanged glances and then looked back at him. As interesting as that offer is, Mr. Havisham, we're not here to dissect you, one of them finally replied. He lifted a full syringe from the trolley top. We're here to see if you can develop the necessary antibodies Oliver needs so he can fight the after effects of the venom. Antibodies? It's as close as we can get to what we've concocted, the doctor replied. Now hold still. The bite of the needle was more painful than he'd expected, and it was all Lewis could do not to jerk away. The flinch ran through his body, and he saw Aiden tense, but the hunter relaxed when that was all Lewis did. The ice-cold burn of whatever they pushed into his system spread down his shoulder to his wrist, and then crept into his chest. He looked at the medic. This isn't going to kill me, is it, Doc? It had better not, Aiden told him. You're worth more than your friend. It won't kill you, the doctor assured him, setting the syringe on the tray and picking up a second. Moving around to Lewis's other arm, he added, but it might make you feel a little rough for a while. This time, Lewis was ready for the bite, although the heat of the second shot's contents was a surprise. What was that? We need a blend of 2 different reactions, the medic told him. From what we know of wolf metabolisms, your system will handle it. It just won't be very happy about it, one of his colleagues added, taking the second empty syringe and handing the doctor a third. And where's that going to go? Lewis asked, shifting apprehensively. Aiden came over and laid a hand on one shoulder, just as the medic plunged the third syringe into Lewis's thigh. Sweet mother of mercy! Lewis yelped as Aiden's hand kept him in place. Tell me that's the last one. Yep, last one. The medics packed up their trolley and left, pausing to address Aiden on the way past. He needs to eat, and then he'll probably need to sleep. Make sure he hydrates, or he's going to find this rougher than it needs to be. Heat and cold swirled into Lewis's chest, and numbness crept up from his thigh. Hydrate? He creaked, and Aiden looked at him. It's on its way. Sweat beaded on Lewis's forehead, and the room swam. Lie down, Aiden told him, but Lewis caught the scent of his previous guard and hesitated. The guy smirked at him from the door and wandered out of sight. Shortly after, his scent faded. Lie down, Aiden repeated, accompanying the command by shaking Lewis's shoulder. Food will be here shortly. Lewis complied, feeling his skin burn even as he shivered. He closed his eyes, only to be shaken awake a short time later. Feel better? Lewis shook his head and regretted it. He groaned and closed his eyes. But Aiden was relentless, making him drink and then eat when the food arrived. I'll leave you another 2 liters, the hunter told him. Try and drink them before I get back. Lewis glanced up at him and tried to work out how much trouble he'd be in if he asked him how he was meant to drink while he was sleeping. Aiden read the question on his face anyway. Just drink as much as you can, he said. Anything left over, I'll get you to drink when I return. In the meantime, finish that. That was the remnants of another 2-liter bottle, and Lewis didn't really want it. He took another look at the expression on Aiden's face and decided he didn't want to be fed it either. Downing what was left in as short a time as possible, he handed the empty one back to the hunter and then watched as the man put its replacement on the floor beside the bed. Sleep, the Alpha commanded, and stalked out the door. Like I've got a choice, Lewis murmured, curling up on his side and letting his eyes drift shut. The smell of wolf surrounded him, both familiar and unfamiliar, both right and wrong. Lewis sat up, or he started to, but his head swam and his skin burned and his limbs didn't want to move. The other wolf laughed. Stay where you are, changeling. Lewis rolled slowly to his side and opened his eyes. The hybrid standing in the doorway was much, much bigger than any of the wolves he'd seen so far. Moving slowly, Lewis pushed himself upright and swung his feet down to the floor. This is such a bad idea, he thought, curling his fingers around the edge of the bed in an attempt not to fall. The strange wolf sniffed. You smell unwell, it said, so I'll keep this short. My name is Agarek, of the Sky Striders. Lewis held up a hand, and it paused. Ah, did Florrie send you? The wolf's ears pricked. No, although I am aware of her name and the other name behind it. Lewis tensed, and the wolf continued. I'm not here to collect you, and would not reach the hangar if I did. Instead, I offer you this. Should you ever find yourself on Alpha 9, I will be waiting. It pushed off the lintel of the door, its eyes travelling to the 2-litre container near the bed. Drink up, pup. You'll need it to be in any fit state to find me. Lewis glanced at the container, wondering if he could reach it without ending up on his face on the floor. He heard the door start to close, and when he looked back, the wolf was gone. Taking a moment to catch his breath, Lewis waited for his head to settle. When the world was no longer so shaky, he picked up the container and took a sip. He followed that with several long gulps and drained half of it without pause. He felt like he'd been worked over by Zanel's goons, and soon lay back down. What the hell did they give me? He groaned, trying to shake the sensation of the room moving around him. When he did sleep, it was more like being sucked into a vortex than sliding into rest, and no time passed before Florrie contacted him once more. Don't talk, just listen, she ordered, and Lewis grunted in response. Taking that as assent, the transporter continued. Good news is I found your way out of your predicament. Bad news is I had to contact Odyssey to do it. Why? Lewis groaned. They're the only ones who had someone in place, and your very paranoid keepers are vetting everyone who comes into Buford's. But Lewis wanted to know how that was happening, and Florrie answered him before he could ask. As long as it's not a customer and their activities don't pose a threat to the company, Buford's turn a blind eye. It's also one way for them to avoid penalty fees for failing to protect their interests. Lewis groaned again. It was the easiest way for him to acknowledge her. Florrie didn't take long to work out that something was off. What is it? Are you hurt? Just acting as an incubator for whatever anti-venom repair nanites Oliver needs. Lewis told her. Fever, chills, weak. I'm in no shape for an escape attempt. That was probably part of the plan, Florrie told him. They can't know wolves well. Aiden's a wolf. He's on their team. Alpha. Lewis's attention drifted. Noted, Florrie said. I'll reduce your bill the relevant amount for the information. Lewis gave a shaky laugh. Thanks. Listen, Florrie repeated. The agent is disguised as a medical assistant. They'll contact you shortly. Blonde, blue-eyed, male, and human. Carries lavender? You'll know him. Lavender? His implant filled with the sensation of a smell Lewis knew but hadn't known the name of. Lavender, Florrie told him. What will they do? He asked, and he wasn't asking about how they were going to help him escape. You mean after they get you out of here? Florrie asked. Yeah, that. Defeat sounded in Lewis's voice. After everything they'd done to avoid being hauled in by anyone who might pass them over to the Justiciars. This. He sighed. What's going to happen to Oliver? Florrie hastened to reassure him. Odyssey won't let any harm come to you, and I'm pretty sure whatever the hunters have let Buford's use you for, it'll pass. They wouldn't risk you being in anything but pristine condition when they hand you over. That reminded him. Do you know who they've sold us to? I think the bidding is still in progress, and it's one hell of a payday. These guys are not going to give you up easily. And Exarch? They might still be a problem, but not yet. Do you want me to monitor the situation? Do we have enough in the account? Florrie paused. It'll leave you very close to the red. Then don't, Lewis decided. Try and keep enough aside for any other expenses that might arise in getting us out of trouble. Will do, Florrie told him. Hang tight. Remember, lavender. Gotcha, Lewis told her. He tried to sound confident, but his emotions were a maelstrom. Florrie was handing them over to Odyssey? He groaned as she signed out, wondering what Oliver would say, and then wondering if Oliver would be in any condition to say anything. Reaching over the edge of the bed, he drained the rest of the container and closed his eyes. He only meant to rest them for a moment, but fatigue dragged him under, and he slept again.